Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever the heck you are in this world. This has been just an extraordinarily beautiful adventure. And it didn't start out that way. Originally, I was going to take a van or a train or a bus around the world to sort of sit with people on street corners, in government offices, in hospitals, in prisons, in homeless shelters. And I was just going to sit with them and ask them what they wanted to say. If they were given the opportunity to say anything in the world that they could say to a person, what would they say? Because we're 8 billion voices now. And even those of us who have voice, like I think I have a fairly good voice. I think I speak pretty well. I think I'm out there enough. But it's hard to get heard even with that. So many of us have, we really can't break through to the next level. So I just thought, what would happen if we created a little series where people just had the platform to be able to say their message, and that collectively, like a mosaic, our messages together would invite people to come and hear our messages individually as well, by just having more and more of these conversations. And it's starting to work. People are saying, boy, I'm listening to all of them now. I'm working, I'm doing something, I'm just putting them on, and how enjoyable. The beautiful thing about this is the people that I am meeting along with you in all transparency. The woman I have today, Holly Woods, I have had a conversation with. We share a mutual friend who we both love and adore. Her name is Sarah McCrum. Sarah does some work, has a book called Love Money, Money Loves You, and she does work with money. Um, but that's really all I know. That was a while back. I haven't had more conversations with Holly. And so it is going to be really my pleasure and my joy to take a little while and sit with her and just hear from her who she is and how she's doing. So, Holly, in in the attempt to not make this a monologue by me, I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to welcome you and say, Holly Woods, welcome to 50 Conversations with 50 Strangers. How are you today?
I'm great, Danny, and thank you. That was a beautiful introduction, and quite honestly, it feels like the most um, authentic engagement to create a mosaic I've ever heard. I really appreciate that, and I just want to reflect that this time has been so fascinating, hasn't it? To to really uncover our deep desire to meet new people all over the
Yeah.
world. I've been so fascinated by the inclination now to reach out to people that we might not have reached out to before. I'm finding my own whatever trepidation I had is like poof gone. So
Yeah.
I'm great. I'm really
And I think there are a lot of people like that. One woman came on the show and she said, "Oh, I see what you're doing. You're creating a mosaic of souls by
yeah
having these conversations." And I thought, boy, I love that. That what
yeah
a
that's
like.
what I'm
I'm not smart enough to think about that, but she said that, and I thought, how beautiful. So before we get started, because I don't know you very well. Normally, if you were on a podcast, I would research you. I would find a bio. I'd be able to tell people what to do. Will you take a minute and tell people who you are and what's important to you?
Yeah, and there's no really way I can do that in a minute, but I'll try to nutshell it as much as possible. I've had a very interesting and complex life, 24 careers now, and a
Wow.
long journey to find myself. But in fact, that's what I've been doing all along. Right now I work primarily with entrepreneurs and innovators and founders and people who want to use their businesses or careers as vehicles to change the world. And I help them gain clarity about who they are, their purpose, uncover what their next expression in life can be. And it could be a new career or a new product or a new business. And then help them live into that clarity in action, if you want it, like an embodied expression of them building whatever. I'm a manifester, so I've built many things. So, everything from talking to your soul, uncovering who you are, helping you get out of your way, reclaim parts of yourself that were repressed from childhood or early experiences. I do product development. I have a long history of product development, and what does that expression look like? And then how do you build the thing that holds that new version of you in the world and activate it so that we can all become the greatest version of ourselves. I really believe that, and you'll probably hear a little bit more about my book, The Golden Thread, that we have this golden thread within us that's been pulling us all along, nudging us to live, according to our soul's impulse, the reason we came back. And we fight that voice because, society, culture doesn't necessarily want us to be ourselves for many reasons. And yet it always emerges. It's like, it rears its head and said, nope, I'm going to keep nudging you. And so when we really truly begin to listen to that, the voice of our soul, the inspiration that comes through us, and live that, we live these magnificent lives that are here to make the grandest expression. And if more of us were doing that right now or at any time, the world would be a very different place. So I'm looking to help each of us make our greatest impact at this time when it's so sorely needed.
I love that.
I'm so inspired.
I love that. So you said a couple of things, and I think I understand them, but I want to just, these are questions. They're not, these are not, if I come across as anywhere more like interrogatory, I don't mean that. It's just a question. When you said we try and live our soul's life, but the society and the culture out there prevents us from doing that. How do you believe that happens?
Well,
why do you think that? Why do you believe that, first of all? And how do you think that happens? Does that make sense to you, what I'm asking?
Yeah, those are two very different questions, why and how. And I did really just write this book called The Golden Thread, Where to Find Purpose in the Stages of Your Life. And this is the culmination of my life's work. So I've, among these 24 careers, I've been like 6 different kinds of coach, and I've been in the transformational arena for a long time, decades. And I've also lived, in the business world, the corporate world of institutions, profit and nonprofit. And I've had this crazy life where I myself had to figure out how to be myself, because I was born into a circumstance that was fairly traumatic, very challenging, many forms of childhood neglect and abuse. And I spent decades trying to get past that, overcome it, to find myself. And so I was my best case study, right? And then I raised 4 kids. And I didn't know at the time that this was like this perfect clinical trial to try to figure out, well, how do you create humans that know how to become themselves in a way that they can contribute their greatest gifts? So 2 of these kids were mine and 2 were stepchildren. And, from 2 very different contexts and rules and boundaries and inspiration and nurturance. So, I got to watch these. I'm a scientist as well, so I got to watch this, my little petri dish. And as I'm working with clients over the years, I just begin to notice, I'm an anthropologist by training also, so I'm noticing this thing in our lives that it's like soul expresses itself very, very early, but we don't know that we're supposed to follow, we don't know what to look for as parents, and certainly as children, we don't have the inclination to do that. The parents don't typically know, I should be watching for these things in my kid to know what they're interested in and curious about, so I can nurture that. And for some reason, I knew to do that with my children. Like, oh, she's interested in that. Let's do more of that, or, this. And so the why is because I'm this sort of scientific mind, and also an anthropologist, had this, very experiential opportunity from my many experiences. I watched this thread over my life, my children's life, and my clients' lives, and I started pulling it apart, deconstructing it, and realizing that purpose lies in our lives uniquely across the many stages of our life, and it looks different, so we don't necessarily see it, and it's hidden behind the wounding. And so the how.
So wait, pause a minute.
There's a lot there.
Right.
Sorry, I don't like this topic at all. You can tell.
I can tell. And so the book is called The Golden Thread. We will have a link to the book in the show notes for sure. And so if you want to go more in depth, this is what Holly's been writing about. This is what her passion's about. Um, there's a little boy in me that is listening to you as you speak, just innocent little boy. And sort of just asking the most simple question, and I'm sure it's not as simple because I don't know the answer to it myself, okay? But why is it so hard to be ourselves? Who could be ourselves better than ourselves? Like the easiest thing in the whole world is to be ourselves. That's who we are. Like even if we go away from being ourselves, that's ourselves going away from being ourselves. Why is there this big sort of study and this big sort of, and I don't want to say intellectual discussion because it's more than that. It's a heartfelt, we leave our center for some reason because we're not safe being who we are. But why in your mind do we go away?
You just
Nobody else
answered
can.
the question, Danny.
Okay, all right, all right.
Your very simple little boy knew exactly what the answer was, because we're not safe being ourselves. That's the only reason we walk away from our center. It is the
Yeah.
only reason. And or, in some cases of, extreme poverty, we're not given the resources to discover more of ourselves as we grow up. So for most of us, the reason we're not really encouraged to be ourselves is because it's unsafe, because the context of our families and our communities, our peer groups say, oh no, you don't want to be that, you want to be this. And that, there's this, the larger cultural milieu is the problem, and then the family context who has values or belief systems or, predefined roles, all of that says, oh no, you have to fit into one of these.
So pause for a minute because I want I want our listeners to just stand with their mouth open like me to hear like, can you believe we exist in a world where being ourself, we're taught not to be ourself
Yeah.
because it's unsafe to be, because and we ride right into that because somehow we don't feel safe being ourselves. So we don't feel safe, and then we're taught that who we are is not who we should be. We need to be something else. What have you found is the something else that I'm supposed to be that is not myself?
So it's never about you're not yourself. It's about a relative degree of selfness.
A
So,
relative degree of
I made that
selfness.
up. That's like, it's a relative experience of being yourself. So your soul, like, this is why you came back, right? Your soul's expression. Your soul says, we're going to go on this journey to, planet Earth, and we're going to be human. And here's what you're going to be in this lifetime, and you're going to have, some of these experiences in order to work these things out. So, here's your ticket, Danny. Go back to Earth. And here's who you choose somebody. This is my belief system, my Holly's cosmology, I call it. So we arrive on planet Earth, and we are put into a womb, and we are born, and then boom, we get like amniotic amnesia, and we forget everything. And so our soul's like, I think my soul's like, I know why I'm here. And your ego's like, I don't have a clue. And so we traverse, there's several things going here. And I could talk about this for days and days, obviously, but
Yes.
there are both our soul nudging us to find its greatest expression. And that doesn't mean a career or a job or a thing that we, a particular task to accomplish in the human sense of it. A task is to move, my task is to move humanity to the next stage. That's not a job or a career, though there are many jobs and careers, so I've had 24 careers, but we each have one of those. And then there's the developmental tasks of being human that we need to accomplish over the stages of our life, which is human development theory and practice and science, which it's sort of the integration of these two things is what I do. And then there's the cultural milieu that we live in that keeps us living within the constraints of this womb-like container that we were born into. And, you know, depends on whether you were born in Florida or California or Denmark, you know, or Africa, some country in Africa, that like you're going to have different milieu and constraints, and they'll all be very both nurturing and constraining. And it's the context that our soul said, you kind of need that one this time
Right.
around. And it's both the container that we're stuck in and the container that we push against. So our soul, in order to evolve, like, oh yeah, I need that. I need that thing that I have to push against in order to become more of myself. But many of us aren't given the resources to gain the capacity to push hard
Yeah.
enough to break through that container.
I want to take a moment and just pause because
Let me down anytime.
because you express yourself so well in the points of view that you say so well. And yet, does anybody else feel how complicated this all is and how intertwined it all is and how much we've created, how much all of us, I mean, Holly's expressing it really well, but many of us have the same things going on in our mind of how complicated we've made something which seems like it should be so simple. Like there shouldn't be anything simpler, like in just a simpleton's world. There shouldn't be anything simpler than me being me and you being you, right? Because that I can't be anything else but me. But yet we make it so complicated. We're going to put your website up. We're going to put your book up. We're going to have all that happen. But we could get caught in this conversation and keep going for, months because I think there's so much to unpack in it all.
Yeah,
Let me jump to something that'll change the energy a little bit. Let's just do a quick lightning round, if that's okay with you.
absolutely.
Um, are you a dog person or a cat person?
I love both.
Oh
In
wow!
fact,
See,
I during the pandemic, um, I I needed a pet so badly because I live alone, and I started out looking for cat, and then I looked for a dog, and then I'm back to looking for a cat, and then I looked for a dog, and actually I think I might get some kitties today.
okay,
You know,
today.
getting pets
Wow,
during the pandemic has been harder than finding a job. I swear, it's just been
wow.
crazy. How about you? What are you?
I am definitely a dog person. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't dislike cats, but like my loyalty is 100% in the dog camp. Um, how about coffee or tea? Which one do you prefer?
Well, I like both. I love both. I have typically drunk a lot of coffee and less tea, but I love tea. And I'm on this thing right now of no caffeine, no coffee, no caffeine, no alcohol. Like I'm sort of cleansing after a
Yeah.
long pandemic in which I drank a lot of coffee and a little more alcohol than I should have. So, how about you?
I am definitely a coffee person. So I don't drink it as much as I used to because now I have some sort of, my wife is trying to get me healthy and we have some sort of herbal supplement that is an
Yeah.
energy drink that's all
I've got a
herbs.
I've got a drink of fake coffee in front of me.
Yeah. So this is more like tastes like a fruit punch, but there's nothing bad in it. It's not it doesn't have all the garbage the fruit punch has. Would you say you're a person that is in the box or out of the box?
Oh, that one's easy. I'm now totally out of the box. And that's a really great metaphor for what we
Yeah.
were talking about earlier. But I used to be in the box. So it took a lot to get me out of the box.
Do me a favor. Talk to me about the pivot point because I bet there's some people that are in the box right now who don't feel comfortable in the box. What was the pivot point that moved you from in the box to out of the box?
I don't think there was one, Danny. You know, I've had many dark nights of the soul and probably many pivot points. There is one that sticks in my head most significantly. Um, as I described earlier, I overcame a lot of trauma that continued into my adulthood. Just you know,
By the
religion.
way, I'm so sorry for that.
Well,
That's
no, it's all good. It's all good. It had to happen for me to gain the capacity that I have to do this work. So
yeah.
it was essential. And at one point in my last marriage, um, it was tough. I was raising these 4 kids. Marriage wasn't great. Felt very alone, isolated, and working very hard. And I had developed these 12 autoimmune disorders.
Wow.
Really felt I didn't
Wow.
know for sure if I was going to make it. And the internist that I was seeing, um, who was helping me with these systemic issues, I went see him one day and basically said, Holly, there's nothing we can do for any of these. You're just going to have to live with these conditions. And I, had taken a handwritten list, like, can we do something about any of these? And he said, I can refer you to a pain clinic in Denver.
Wow.
That's really all I know to do. These are lifelong conditions. And I literally at that moment said, no, that doesn't work for me. I do not accept that kind of limitation in this life. I have worked too hard to stay alive and on the planet. And I'm going to find solutions. And I literally was either I'm leaving the planet because I can't live like this, or I'm going to find the solutions. And I chose solutions.
Wow.
And so I set about, not only all kinds of alternative healthcare and energy work and, everything under the sun that's not Western medicine, but also more deep inquiry and shadow work and karmic release and blah, blah, blah. I just went at it. That was 15 years ago. And they're all, I have a bit of arthritis still, but everything else is gone.
Wow.
And I'm
Congratulations.
healthy as a horse and happy and, so glad I made it.
So those of you who are listening, when science or doctors or people tell you there is no way out, just remember the last minute of this conversation that um, there is nothing that is preordained that has to be the way it is. So I just, if the podcast, if this would end right now, people listening would have gotten more than they bargained for with just that one statement. So thank you for sharing that with us. Holly, knowing both of these are important and knowing your propensity to say both, I want to ask you to steer away from that. And I want to ask you, which is more important for you? Is it more important for you to speak your voice and be heard? Or is it more important for you to hold a platform for other people to be listened to? And I know the tendency is to say both, right? Because I know, because we,
Um, I have so much energy moving through me with that question. That was a beautiful question, Danny.
thank you.
And I want to hear your response to this as well. But I think it was a phased thing. I had to find my voice and really learn to be, 'cause part of a facet of my purpose is to speak powerful truths, to shine love onto shadow, liberate soul's potential, reunite love and power. There's the whole thing. So I had to find my voice in order to be with the people that I am here to help illuminate and amplify. So
Yeah.
I actually, at this moment in time, prefer the latter because I'm here to help others live their greatest lives to get us all on purpose.
Yeah.
So I'm just a facilitator of other people's lives and journeys. And I don't need to be on a big stage. If I could amplify 1,000,000 people tomorrow, that would be my choice versus being on stage.
Love it. Love
Thank
it.
you.
Uh, for a long time, my life has been about giving expression to my voice. I've never had a problem speaking my voice. I've always had an ability. My dad, growing up, even as a little kid, said, Danny, you have a gift of gab. You can talk about anything at any time with anybody. So it wasn't ever that I had a problem speaking my voice. But when I worked at Hay House, I decided it was really important for me to be able to allow the people that I was with the space to build the platforms for them.
Mm.
so that they could get known and their messages could get out. That was my job. That was what I was doing. I was a director of business development there. That's how we grew the company from 3 million to $100 million together by bringing people in and giving them that place. Then I thought, well, you know what? If you don't speak your voice, how will anybody ever hear you? And so I went through a brief phase of speaking my voice and wanting to do it. And i.e., I wrote a book called The Mosaic, which is sort of the legacy that I want to leave to people about a boy who loses his parents 2 years apart on the same day. And when he asks the adults where his parents are, they tell him they're in a place called heaven. And he sets out in search of that place called heaven. In finding my voice, what my voice is telling me is that it's time to create a revolution of listening.
Mm.
And so my own voice is saying people have forgotten how to listen.
That is so powerful. That just came at me like a wave and then traveled through. Um, oh, goodness. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Hopefully you had a surfboard so you didn't go under the way.
Yeah, I kind of always have a surfboard at this point. Like you never know what's going to happen, so you
You
got to
never
have
know
a
where it's
surfboard
coming, when it's coming.
to
Uh,
manage it.
uh, all right, we're
You
still in
know,
our lightning. We're still in our lightning round, and we're not lightning very quickly here.
I don't think lightning is possible for you and me,
maybe,
but I'm having
maybe
fun.
not. It's all. It doesn't matter because all of it is good, right? Um, Throughout your life, have you felt like someone who has always fit into the world, or has always been a little bit different?
No, I've actually never fit in. That was pretty easy. I haven't felt like I belonged on the planet most of my life, and now I know why, and that's okay. Um, I came here to do a particular job task, and it required me to be, I think, somewhat, I'm sorry, I'm not being lightning again, somewhat distant to the experience so I could observe it and play witness and understand it in order to do it.
Yeah.
So I've always been a little bit outside of every circle, every, family from origin, from family
Yeah.
into every social circle I've ever been in of any sort. I'm always kind of outside looking in. Um, and now I'm okay with that. I get it. That was the way I was supposed to be here.
Love it.
And how about you?
I love that you always say, and how about you? I love that. I think what I've always felt, I've never felt like I fit in. And because of that, I always felt like I didn't fit in and I was an outsider. But the more and more and more that I've been with people and I've shared with people, what I realize is a large majority of us don't feel like we fit in. And someone answered it so beautifully on one of these conversations that I had. They said, well, I feel like I fit in, but the whole place that I fit in is a world full of misfits that don't fit in. So I feel like I fit into a misfit world where nobody fits in. And I said, God, in a weird way, I sort of get that. And yet so many of us have pain and anxiety from the fact that we are trying to fit into this world that we believe we are supposed to fit into. Some of that hints back to why we're not okay being ourselves and we're trying to be somebody else.
Yes.
And yet, the more and more we see that so many of us don't feel like we fit in, the more not fitting in becomes the norm, giving us sort of permission to be ourselves again, which I think
Absolutely.
is really beautiful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So thank you for asking me for my thoughts
Yeah.
on
I
that.
think you just hit the nail on the head. I mean, that circles right back to where we started, kind of,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
knowing that we're not supposed to fit in those tight containers in any
yeah,
part of our lives. You
yeah.
fit, you grow, you learn, you whatever's there, you take it, and then you move to the next container that can hold you. Right?
So I want to reframe that for me, just because we're having a conversation. I love that that's what you say, and I get it so much. I don't think there's a supposed to involved in anything that I believe anymore. I think there's some people that fit in, and I always wish that I could be one of those people. I wish that I lived 4 blocks from my parents' house, and I never, but that just wasn't the life that I was given to live. So accepting my life as what it is has been more valuable for me than trying to wish that I had fit in somewhere before early on. So but there's so many people that do fit into those boxes, and I say I salute you for it. What a beautiful place to be.
Yeah, let me reframe that, because I think
Please.
um, the supposed to that I was referring to was related to the developmental tasks that are required in any stage of our life to become a healthy, whole human being. So
Hmm.
in infancy, there are some things that need to occur for us to grow up as an infant, and the same in childhood and adolescence, etc. So we need containers that provide us those resources to grow up well. And that's the should that I was referring to, is that
Totally.
we know what those things are that children and adolescents need that are often not provided. And
Yeah.
that container then, while it did nourish us, we outgrow it and we need to move out of it.
Yeah. I
So
completely
it's
understand.
kind of a
And
both and.
just our luck that I have a beautiful developmentally delayed daughter who never fit any of those milestones, or never walked
Yeah.
any of those. And what it helped me to do is redefine what those milestones
Mm-hmm.
became for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only milestone that became important to me at that point, where I saw she wasn't like, kids were running and she was just learning how to sit up, so there, she wasn't in keeping with those milestones. But what my milestone for her was that she knew that no matter what she did, no matter how far she progressed or didn't progress, that she was loved and adored, completely accepted, completely acknowledged for being beautiful in who she was, and validated for who she was and what she did. And I talk to her now like she's in a group home now, which is the saddest thing in my life, because I want her here. She's 30 years old. And because of COVID, I haven't seen her for 4.5 months. We see each other every week or every other week. But because, thank God we have FaceTime. Thank God we have technology, because every day at 10 o'clock, because she loves those, routines. Every day at 10 o'clock, we have a FaceTime, and we talk to each other, and our conversations aren't in depth because she can't speak like you and I speak, but they are literally backgrounds for expressions of love that allow her to feel completely loved and adored,
Mm-hmm.
and quite frankly, allow me to feel completely loved and adored by her. And
Mm-hmm.
so some of those milestones for me, and I only say it because our life experience creates
Right.
different perspective points, right? Okay, I think
Thank
I
you
know the
for sharing
answer.
that, Annie.
uh,
That was really such a powerful story.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you for saying that. You appreciate my stories. I like that. I've got to stay around you more. No,
Well, obviously, what I see is that story about your daughter, how she has played such an important um, foundational piece for you in learning to listen.
oh my God,
Like,
incredible.
like that's part of your story, is how you became a parent who could accommodate the needs of this child, this precious child, and you became what she needed, and that grew you.
So
And
for fear of overstaying my welcome here on this point, you,
well, I'm just going to say I'm grateful. Thank you.
thank you. I have had, I have sat with some of the most powerful teachers in the world, not in their audiences, but in their living rooms and at their dining room tables. I have sat with some of the richest people in the world, and I've gotten to know their families and their friends, and they've been, all of these people have been kind enough to ask my counsel, and have been kind enough to give me counsel, not because we were one was seeking upmanship on the other, but because we were friends.
Mhm.
And I've also had the unique privilege to sit on street corners with the poorest of the poor. And I've had the honor to do the same thing with them, where they've been kind enough to ask my counsel and kind enough to give me their counsel. And of all those people, the person who has taught me the most in my life, and I've learned a lot from a lot of people, has been my daughter. And my daughter, because we're speaking about it, I just want to share this story with you. My daughter doesn't speak like you and I speak. So when she says things, most people don't understand her. But she counts on me to understand her because I'm the one that's closest to her. And so when she tries to say something and I don't understand her, she'll raise her voice
Mm.
and she'll say it louder. But most often it isn't because I didn't hear her, it's because of the clarity is not there. And yet, to her credit, sometimes when she says it louder, she says it a little bit differently, and it jolts something in my head that says, "Oh, that's what you're talking about." And we're not talking about philosophical conversations here. We're talking about what our basic human needs are. When she says it louder and I don't get it, she'll go into a tantrum. And that can be in the middle of a restaurant. It could be at a friend's house. It could be while I'm on the phone talking to somebody at work. It can be while we're just alone. It can be while I'm giving her a bath. It could be in a restaurant. It can be anywhere. And when the tantrum doesn't stop the situation so that she feels heard, she will come out in the end try and attack me. So she'll run and she'll try and rip my shirt, or she'll try and bite me. Now, I believe I'm a warm and sensitive man who's fairly intelligent. I was tested with a genius IQ in school. But none of that warm sensitivity geniusness helped me for 1 minute understand what was going on with my daughter. And this went on for about 15 years, Holly.
Wow.
Sometimes as many as 4, 5, 10 times a day. Thank God it wasn't every day. Finally, after 15 years, where every hair in my face and head had turned white, I finally looked at her and I said, "Elisa, I can't do this anymore. I don't understand you. And I want so badly to understand you. I want to hear what you're saying. I want to know what you think, and I just can't understand you. You have to find another way without words to communicate to me what it is you're trying to say."
Mm.
And from the midst of her rage, she went into this smile that just melted my soul completely. And in perfect English, she said, "I am Daddy." I said, "What the heck do you mean you are Daddy? Wow, how are you doing that?" And she took her finger and she put it to the side of her head. And I said, "You little son of a gun, are you telling me that you are putting thoughts into my head? Is that how you're trying to communicate with me?" And she went, "Yes, Daddy," and started to laugh uncontrollably, so much so that it became contagious. And she and I just were making each other laugh and going back and forth. And we probably laughed for 5 or 10 minutes, but it felt like it was 2 or 3 years. Just consistent. As soon as she would stop, I would continue going, and she would get caught in my laughter, and I would get caught in hers, and we just went on. The relief of knowing now that she had finally communicated and that I was finally able to hear her was so great for her. And if the story would have stopped there, it would have been all that I would have needed. But Holly, what I realized is Elisa's modality, her method of conversation, I saw it in every single person that I worked with, every single person that I met. When people speak and they don't get heard, they yell. When they yell and they don't get heard, they create havoc. They create a scene. They try and disrupt and create chaos. When their chaos doesn't work, they try and destroy something. It could be a business, it could be a town square, it could be a building, it could be a relationship, it could be a friendship, it could be the reputation of somebody. And what I realized is this little sucker of a kid had taught me the simple technology of retrofitting any disagreement by just finding a way to hear what somebody was saying.
Mm-hmm.
She taught me to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about the way that we live in our world today and how little people listen, I realized what a gift that would be if we could create that revolution. Back to the lightning round, okay?
No, I just want to pause for a minute. Um, that was incredibly powerful. And so this, kind of demonstrates really what I was speaking about earlier, that these circumstances of our lives create the opportunity through which we become ourselves.
Yes.
And you so magnificently utilized that opportunity with your daughter to not only support her and nurture her as she needed, you become a better version of you, a more amplified version of who you are. And your purpose then became that gift that's now guiding you
Yeah.
in many ways in your life. So I'm really grateful to both you and your daughter that somehow you wove that mosaic together, that let you become, you both become more potentiated.
Thank you so much for your listening, for your understanding, and for your kind words.
Mm. Mm.
Are you a leader or a follower?
You could probably answer that one. I don't
So,
follow well. And
okay.
never have. I mean, I can be, I have had compliant times in my life, but they didn't usually end well. I'm a manifester. I'm an alpha. I'm a visionary. I see things. And that doesn't, I co-create and collaborate and I'm very cooperative, and I love building things with other people. But I'm generally, 5 to 10 years out ahead of wherever the culture is.
I love that. So let me refine it, because when I first asked the question to people, a lot of people said they're leaders, and I just left it there, and I thought that's great. Or there's some people
The
would say
world
they're
of
followers.
leaders.
Anyway, we're in a world of leaders. Um, and then I started to think about it, because I started to think about it from my own point of view. And I looked at our leaders that we follow in the world today.
Mm.
I look at them politically. I look at them socially. I look at them religiously. And many of them represent movements that are really beautiful movements. And each movement that I can see has a short side to it, has a downside to it, has something that people aren't doing with the integrity that they really need to do. But it's been rare for me to see leaders within our leadership standing up and calling out their own silo for not doing things the way they need to. The clearest way to look at it is Democrat and Republican. It doesn't matter which side you're on. If you're a Republican and you love Trump, he's done amazing things, some amazing things, and he's also done some really lousy things. But you see a complete alliance to those things, with the acceptance of all the good and all the bad, and nobody's standing up to say, look, he's been great here, but this is really not, like, we won't stand for this anymore. And if you look at the Democrats, it's the same thing. It's almost like you can't turn on the TV with somebody attacking at him, right? Because, like, there's so much that they see morally that he's just not caring about. That he doesn't care. It doesn't seem to care about people. But they very rarely stand up and say, "But you did this, which was really good. If you just would have continued in that way." I'm thinking of coronavirus. Every time you hear Trump talk about it, he says, "January 30th, I stopped incoming people from China, and everybody opposed me on it." No, but that was probably a good thing to do. That he stopped people coming in from China. That was probably a good thing to do. It probably saved us some disease. But nobody says, "Hey, that was great. We salute you for doing that. We were opposed to you doing that. And it turned out that was a smart decision." But then what happened from January 30th to April 1st? Like,
Mhm.
you that's so we give you kudos for doing that.
Mhm.
But nobody even gives him kudos for doing that. So all he does is he goes back to, like, he gets beaten up and punched at, and he goes, "But don't you see I did this?" And nobody sees he did this, so he goes back to, "Don't you see I did this?" What would it take to be a lead? What does it take as a leader? And you've had a lot of different careers. You've led in a lot of different ways. What's it take to be a leader that is more committed to truth and to what's right than to the silo that we live in?
Yeah. That's in my mind the most significant question we should be asking if we decide to, lead um, in any venture, whether it's parenting or, Fortune 100 corporation or a social movement, there's a saying that, the larger the vision, the greater the shadow.
Yeah.
And in my own work and life, I've found that literally the taller a person stands or the further out in front they get, the more shadow is available to deconstruct the utility of their dream. And so what I know is that I can hardly take a step forward thinking I'm going to accomplish something or make a contribution without saying, okay, so where's the shadow about this? How might I be overlooking something about how I'm doing this that will cause harm or, make a mess of whatever I'm trying to create. And I think we don't do that enough. We don't
Yeah.
look at the shadow of leading as fundamental as the leading itself. And I mean, I do a lot of shadow work in my own life
Yeah.
first, and then with my clients. I'd say, half of what I do with people is let's look at what you can't see about yourself. That's all shadow is. It's not some evil, dark, menacing thing. It's just, what you can't see, what you don't know. And so uncovering the unconscious and making it conscious and then deciding, is that useful or not? How does that harm? How does that contribute? So in my mind, that then creates a more holistic version of us that can be prepared to bring something into the world. I mean, that's all leadership is. It's bringing an idea or an action into the world and looking around and saying, does anybody want to play this game?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because I certainly can't play it by myself.
Yeah. I've had a really interesting, and I love what you're saying, and I love the way I love the way that different perspectives express the same thing differently. And the mosaic to me is just exactly what you're saying from a completely different, different perspective of just this fableized version of what happens when Mo goes out to find heaven, but he doesn't find the rabbis and the ministers and the swamis and the priests. He finds the trash man and the road worker and the homeless man and the blind woman and a cast of other characters. And he wonders why he's sitting with them. And he says, well, you're sitting with them, so why not just take the time to listen to what they have to say? And Holly, in 100% of the cases, after taking a few minutes and just taking time to listen to what a person says to him, he realizes the person he initially saw isn't at all who they are now. And it happens over and over and over again, so much so that it makes him question, do I see the world that is, or do I see the world that I am?
Mm-hmm.
And what would happen if I got out of my own way and could actually see the world the way it is? And at that moment, he looks over to the right and he sees a monk unzipping the sky and inviting him to walk through with him to a parallel reality
Mm-hmm.
where he meets the wise one who's the keeper of the mosaic. Same exact thing that you're saying of
It
how
is.
do we see what we can't see, right?
Yeah.
But just told in a story fableized version of it, which is
Yeah.
fabulous.
I love that.
Um, do you believe that things in the world speak to us?
Speak to us.
In other words, do you think our bodies speak to us? Do you think the environment speaks to us? Do you think illnesses speak to us? Do you think coronavirus and racial tensions are speaking to us? Do you think that the world itself, not just people, not just if we listen to people, we would hear more, but if we actually listen to the world around us, we might see something we don't know?
From the expression of your question, I think I can derive what you would respond.
Well,
Yes.
I can tell you easily. When I wrote the mosaic, I wrote this. It's a fableized version of the story of my life, and so the characters that I was writing about were characters that I met, characters that I thought I knew. I made up one or two just so I could experience them new as the reader would experience them. I thought it would take me 6 weeks to write, but 2.5 years into it, I was sitting pulling out my hair, saying, "Why are you making this so hard?" And so I invited them all to come before me.
Mm.
And maybe this conversation isn't real. Maybe you don't exist. Maybe I'm just talking to my imagination here. But they came to me on like a Zoom call, and I saw each one of them in their own little box. And they all waited their turn. And I said, "Why are you preventing this book from being written? What is it you're trying to tell me?" And these were characters that I created.
Yeah, beautiful.
They were not real, so to speak. The reality, I gave them their reality, or so I thought. But when I saw them in the Zoom box, they said to me, "Danny, we don't want to say what you're telling us to say.
Mm.
We want you to listen to what we're telling you and say that." And I said, "And if I do?" They said, "Your book will be done in 6 weeks, just like you thought." And I thought, how is it possible that you're coming to me to tell me? I breathe life into you. How are you now telling me what it is? They said, "Well, why would you think it would be different?" And when I realized that the world around us speaks to us,
Mhm.
the pains in our body are telling us something. The people in our relationships are telling us something. Our workplace is telling us something. The world, the environment is telling us something. That if we remember my story of my daughter, speak, yell, tantrum, destroy. Everything is in that same pattern.
Yeah.
And if we would only listen to it, we wouldn't have to go through all the gyrations that we have to go through. So yes, I believe everything in the world speaks to us.
And I'm in agreement with you. If you recall the story I told earlier about, um, the multiple disorders, autoimmune disorders that wanted to
Yes.
take me out. Part of what occurred at that moment is I said, all right, I'm going to listen better. I
Yeah.
literally, the goal was, I'm going to listen, I'm going to learn to listen in every way possible to what life is telling me so that I'm no longer resisting where it wants me to go. And that was, thank you for pulling that out of me. Because learning to listen in, a multi-dimensional way became a goal for me, a life goal for, I don't know, about a decade. And so I developed all my mini antennae in order to listen better to what my life is trying to tell me. And when I did so, it spoke to me like, I hear those voices all day long. It's not quiet in there, but they're welcome. It's not like they're unwanted voices or chatter. It's like there's a constant communication going on. And I talk to trees and plants and animals and, there's just,
Right.
there's no silence in the silence. It's not empty.
I understand. So, with that in mind, which I thank you for sharing, with that in mind, two questions. First, what do you think the world is trying to say to us collectively? And if you can hear it, what is it actually trying to say to you individually?
Mm. Um, I actually do talk to the planet pretty frequently, Mother Earth. I'm very, very rooted in the planet and nature. Um, I see the grid and I'm pretty attached to the grid and grounded in it. And I believe that she is calling us to co-create something different with her.
Hmm.
She's been tolerant for a really long time of us being here. And, she's kind of, there's some fed upness, which, parents reach a state of fed upness. Like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. We're going to try it differently. And so she's saying, no, we're not going to do this anymore. You can't ruin me. I'm always going to be here. So, but let's try something different that might actually allow you to stay. Oh, it makes me want to cry. Wow, that was
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm just hearing her in the moment.
Yeah,
And
me too.
for me personally, I mean, I'm a voice for that. A minute. Um, you know, what I do, this purpose thing, finding ourselves, is really about aligning with the natural order of things, natural, natural laws of nature. Um, the universe, it's all holographic. We're these tiny little cells in our bodies, and there's us, and there's the planet, and blah blah. Quantum field. Um, when we align the most organic, native version of us, it all works. We're in flow. And, part of this lesson she's giving us is, come on, people, why are you fighting me? I'm here to support you. I'm, the most nurturing, beautiful green planet probably in the cosmic sphere. Um, and there's so much abundance here, and we've so wasted our time. And so I know that really my goal is to live from the most native, organic version of me
Hmm.
that can possibly be here in this lifetime,
Beautiful.
and to help others live that too. That we not only don't have to fight each other, we don't have to fight ourselves.
Yeah, beautiful.
And you?
And you. And tu, Brute. Uh, I'm a storyteller, so everything I have is a story. Um, my book, The Mosaic, talks about a boy who loses his parents 2 years apart on the same day. Well, that boy was me. I lost my dad when I was 13 and my mom when I was 15, both on the 4th of July. And so the story that I made up from that, that took me for 40 years of my life through my life, was that I needed to learn to be independent, that I needed to be able to be strong in myself, that I needed to stand up, that I needed to be able to do things by myself, that I needed to not rely so much on people, that one moment they could be there and one moment they could be gone. And it was about 4 or 5 years ago, I was sitting having coffee with a friend when I had this aha moment hit me, where it said, hold it, my parents died on the 4th of July. They weren't born on the 4th of July. Had they been born on the 4th of July, then independence would have been what gives them life and freedom. But they were telling me independence is actually death.
Mm-hmm.
That being independent means that I cut off everything for myself. And that it was in some sort of mosaic of belief systems of what I used to believe to what the mosaic was inviting me to believe, that I realized how important it was for me to see we're all connected, that we're all a part of each other, that we're all living this lie that seems so true that we call it the truth, which is we're separate from each other.
Yeah.
And this truth that seems so much of a lie that we call it a lie, which is that we're connected. Because how am I connected to you? You're this beautiful woman sitting in this other place in the world. I'm this old fat guy sitting in San Diego, California. And how are we connected? There's nothing logical about that, until we realize that science is now leading the way with quantum physics and telling us that we're not this body. Even when we look at this body under a microscope, all we see is swirls of energy. So the energy that is in you and the energy that is in me is exactly the same. The air that you breathe into your body, Adolf Hitler breathed into his body, and so did Gandhi, and so will I 10 seconds later. And so we are not made up of differences. We are made up of similarities. We are the same. And so, what I think the world is trying to say to us is, how long are you going to stand on your own? How long are you going to find fault with people of different colors, with different borders, with different economic status, with different religions? I'm going to take something to give you to show you that there is nothing that will separate you. I'm going to give you a virus that knows no boundaries, knows no borders, knows no skin color, even though it is affecting people of color more than it is people of white. It's affecting everybody, every age, every nation, every religion. And I'm going to try and infuse that in you so that you see that you can help each other by being more there for each other. And for me individually, what I think the world really is trying to say to me is, how long will you watch how other people have failed? How long will you hide behind the fact that people who were really good people that you found for Hay House became really full of themselves and became big egomaniacs and now believe that they are more than they are, and just hide behind that to not go and do what you have to do? It's really time for you to step out and do what you do. If you fall down, so what? You fall down. Just get back up again. Surround yourself with a mosaic of people that will hold you true to what you believe, that will hold you true to what you know, that will never let you get caught in the thought that you're more than you are. Walk with that mosaic into a world that always says, I'm just another bozo on the bus doing what bozos on the bus do. And you can ride next to me, you can ride for further. It's time to create a new model, a new paradigm, because this old paradigm isn't working. And the ideas from this old paradigm are not going to solve the paradigm that we're leaving. We have to find a new paradigm that makes the old paradigm obsolete, like Bucky Fuller said. And that paradigm is resting on shoulders of you and me and other people that listen to this show, and other people that are ready to stand up and say, to me, what is leadership? It's no longer a vertical reality. It's a mosaic reality where all the pieces of the mosaic simply come together. No one teaches, no one guides, no one fixes, no one helps. It's literally in coming together as individual pieces, broken and whole, big and small, all different colors, all different textures, all different shapes and sizes. But in coming together, we become more beautiful than anything we could ever be on our own. That's the leadership model that I'm looking for. One where we just embrace each other rather than lead or fight or direct or talk or change each other. You got more than you bargained for with that answer.
No, that's great. Thank you for sharing all that. And um, I too watched what transpired in the pandemic um, when my anthropologist had, I'm now calling myself an evolutionary anthropologist, just the witnessing of humanity, basically deconstructing during the lockdown and having to go deep inside because it was so challenging.
Yeah.
And we each in our own way did this deep digging about who am I and why this and now what's next, over and over and over again, because of the duration, and we did it globally. It's not like some segment of us did it. It's like we all had to do it. So there was no escape. And we evolved.
Yeah.
We became better humans
Yeah.
collectively. We each took a step up on the rung of the ladder of evolution. And there is an opportunity now to be and do something different as humans. It's here.
And I think even for those who haven't taken a step up or haven't felt like they've taken a step up, we have shared a common moment that very few people in the course of civilization have ever shared, where we all experienced a pause in the way the world operates for a few moments, and it came to every crevice of every nation of every part of this world. And if we did nothing more than realize that we have a shared common reality of that shared common reality will grow within us as something more. We are way over time, but that's okay. And let me close by asking you one simple thing. What would you like to tell the world?
The world needs you. The world needs each of us and our, whatever, wherever we are, whatever our current expression is. The world needs us to be more of that and to become so alive and awake and grounded in that, that it naturally leads to the next thing that we become, that you become, because that's what happens. We can't help it. We can't
Yeah.
help it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So more of that, more of whoever you are.
I love the evolution of where we came from in the conversation, because we started out by saying how scared we are to be ourselves because of how painful it is, and how now we've come to this place where I agree with you 1000%. All of us are important. It's time for all of us. A mosaic is made up of individual pieces who are at peace with their peace, coming together to create pieces of peace that create mosaic of pieces.
Mm.
And it's peace, Peace by Piece, that I believe is the new model for how the world is going to change.
Mm.
Piece by piece. Holly, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do it?
So hollywoodscoaching.com is my website. You can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook or small Instagram presence. I've got a free roadmap from Purpose to Impact on my website that I'd love for you to download and see what the sort of the big picture is of how I work with people to get clarity about purpose and have more of an impact in the world. Holly at hollywoodscoaching.com is my email if you want to reach out. Be delighted to hear.
And we'll have all that in the show notes. And I want to invite those of you who are listening to take advantage. Get in touch with Holly. She has done so many things in the world which her modesty is preventing her from telling you.
Mhm.
Um, Talk with her, have a conversation, see what you need, what she has, what we can do. How do we come together? How do we create a mosaic of strangers? Stranger things have happened, and strangers coming together to create beautiful harmonies in the world. Let's not be strangers anymore. Let's get to know each other.
Yeah, that's a beautiful vision, Danny. Thank you for inviting us all into it.
Absolutely. It's my honor. Thank you so much, Ali, for being here with us. Thank you, those of you who come and listen to these conversations. I find them so enthralling, so beautiful, so beneficial to my own soul. And I hope you do too. And I hope you'll share them with your friends. I hope you'll share them with people. If you know people that you think would like to have a conversation, please contact me, and we'll set it up, because I can't think of a better thing to do with my life
Mm.
than to sit and get to meet people that I never knew existed 10 minutes before. Thank you again, Holly, for being here.
Delightful.
And thank you, everyone, for coming. Until next one, don't be strangers. Get to know each other.